Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our final Yes event for the day. It's been a packed day, and this is our second and final panel of the week. This evening's panel is focused on elevating BIPOC voices in design education. Before we get started, we would like to acknowledge that the land on which George Brown College is situated is the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation and other Indigenous peoples who have lived on this land. Today, the meeting place of Toronto is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we're grateful to have the opportunity to work in the community and on this territory. Across the School of Design, we remain committed to identifying and removing systemic barriers to accessing college programs and services, and we're committed to identifying strategies, tools, and actions to better support our Indigenous student population. BIPOC, which is Black, Indigenous, and People of Color designers, have long been underrepresented in the world of design. This underrepresentation often begins within the education system, which often fails to provide varying points of entry and access. How might we elevate design and its value as a viable career option? How might we empower educators with the language and knowledge to better reduce systemic barriers within the design classroom? What support is required by students to feel more secure about their careers as young designers, given the existing design landscape? Join us for a conversation on how we might transform the world of design education into a more equitable and inclusive space. We're joined by an amazing group of students this evening, and this session today will be moderated by Design Management Program Coordinator Tony Allen. I will now turn it over to the team to introduce themselves.
Hello, I am Tony Allen. As Anita said, I'm the Program Coordinator and Professor in the Design Management Program. I'm also the Professor in the Bachelor of Digital Experience Design and Graphic Design program outside of George Brown. I'm a co-founder and head of user experience for Rev, a Toronto-based digital design agency.
My name's Jesse. I am graduating this year from the graphic design program at George Brown. Throughout my time in school, I've been doing freelance illustration and graphic design, branding, things like that. Yeah, I'm just looking forward to being part of this discussion.
Hi, everyone. I'm Janine. I am a recent graduate of the Design Management Program here at George Brown, and I am an illustrator, graphic designer, and I just started my own brand named Auto, where proceeds are donated to those with chronic conditions.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kathleen. I'm in the Concept Art for Entertainment program, which is a one-year postgrad. Previously, I did a degree in film, and I'm looking to be a concept artist after graduation.
Hi everyone, my name is Jasmine. I am a recent grad of the graphic design program at George Brown. I'll be entering the Honors Bachelor of Brand Design next week, so it's very exciting. I also run the School of Design account on Instagram, Design GBC, as well as the Yes account, SOD_yes. So be sure to follow us self-promo.
Hey, I'm Michael Zegarier. I'm a graduate. I'm in the graduating class like everybody else. I'm taking graphic design. I graduated from graphic design with a major in advertising, where I work in a lot of campaigns and a whole lot of ad stuff. So yeah.
Thanks, everybody. I'm going to turn it over to Tony, who will now get us started with our discussion for the evening.
Perfect. Thank you. Welcome to everybody, and thank you for everyone who's joined in. My very first question was super straightforward for everyone on the panel. Why did you choose to study design?
So for me, if I'm honest, I saw a friend doing it. She'd always post like projects that she was working on, from packaging to like motion graphics, things like that. And at the time, I was in an animation program that wasn't really working out because it was brutal for me. So I was looking for a transition. But yeah, I didn't really think much of graphic design at the time. I knew that you just make things type of thing. But like as I got into it, I realized how much of an impact it has in like our everyday life. So I'm definitely glad that I ended up going into the graphic design.
I'll start off with mine. Before graphic design, I think I speak for a lot of Filipinos in the audience, if there are any, but it was my predetermined fate to be a nurse, and that's where my parents wanted me to go into. In high school, I was kind of studying the sciences and preparing for my career in that, but then I discovered a media arts class in my high school where it taught me introductory to Photoshop and photography, some video editing, and I found that really interesting. Then there was another class called Information and Consumer Design, which was kind of an actual introduction to graphic design, where we did the packaging, editorial design, typography, and everything. And I didn't know what graphic design really was at the time, but I just had that feeling where, and this is something I reflected on yesterday, where at the time I was like going into nursing, but I kind of had this feeling like I hate math and science, but I love doing stuff on the computer. What does this mean? And then showing some of my work to my teacher for an assignment, getting some feedback. He asked me, what do you want to do for post-secondary? And I was like, I'm going to be doing nursing. And he said, you should really consider a career in graphic design. Like I see potential in you. And I think this is something that you'll have a lot of fun in and will enjoy. And yeah, you should go for it. And that's really why I chose to study design, because somebody supported me and saw potential in me and reaffirmed that something that I like doing is something I should be doing.
Yeah, ultimately the reason I chose to study design is because I think at the end of the day, I had a passion for it. The one thing about design that I don't really know that you could say for any other industry is that it's so integrated into every aspect of our everyday life, whether like that's the clothes we wear, the furniture we have, the music we listen to. And as much as we like to say that, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, I think at the end of the day, a lot of people do. And that's certainly true for different brands and different companies. And I just saw the value in design and being able to really be the first experience that somebody has with a company or a brand or, an entity. And I just love that concept. So that's why I got into design.
All right, so the reason I got into design, I've always been a creative person, but I think for me, growing up, I heard the saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words, and not being able to communicate with my grandparents. Like my dad's side is Taiwanese, my mom's side is German. So me as a child, I would draw them pictures, and that would be my mode of communication with them. So I would see their faces light up, and for me, that was something that always drove me to create, because creation was communication for me. And I think that it was just easy for me to transition to design, because design is all about that universal language of communication and understanding. So that's really where my love for it came from, and from being able to communicate with my grandparents that I normally wouldn't have been able to. So yeah.
Well, my reason is the same as Kathleen, I guess, is passion. Basically, I wanted to get in a field where I would be happy doing what I would be doing every day and not wanting to have to regret it later on or something along those lines. So I looked into engineering, medicine, I looked into everything, but none of those interested me. And I had a knack for like the creative side, but I didn't know how far I would go at first. But the more time I gave it, and the more time I invested in it, and the more time I looked into it, the more passionate I became about graphic design. And the more time I spent in it, like crafting, being better at my craft, reaching where I am today, my passion keeps on going, and the more reason I wanted to do it in the future. So a clear-cut answer would be passion.
Awesome. Got a panel of really passionate students, which is beautiful. So Jasmine mentioned that her teacher saw potential in her, and that's one of the things that raised her awareness of actually pursuing a career in the creative industry. For everybody else, or for Jasmine as well, if no one tells you what options are available, how do you know? How do you find out or figure out that this is an industry that you want to move into that does have viable career options?
Yeah, I think it's something to look into the education that you're brought up into. I know with my particular high school, we weren't an art school. We had the information consumer design class was a really good program, but we all in all, we weren't an art school. So you don't really know of the options out there, because they don't, at least in the Ontario education system, there's no focus on arts. There's actually I think like Doug Ford has cut some of the budget for art programs, which is so unfortunate. There's mostly a focus in some subjects like science and maths. So I think it's very difficult to know what the options are outside of being a doctor and a lawyer when in our own education system from a young age, we don't really know those options. And I think the way you kind of find out about it is through just like seeing people do it or noticing the world around you. Design is everywhere. Through like advertising, packaging. It's you don't really realize it until you take a look and kind of think like, oh, somebody made this, somebody did this for a reason. Who did this? And it then directs you to the question of like, how can I do this for the world? You know?
Yeah, to touch on what Jasmine was saying, I think I actually had an opposite experience. I feel like my school really tried to push me away from the arts and design field. I remember I really had to justify to my guidance counselor in high school that design and art was something I really wanted to do. I think out of my entire graduating class, I was the only one that ended up in an arts and design school. And I remember vividly taking this one quiz in our guidance class, and it was based off our skill set, our personality, you know, what we like doing. And I remember I got emotional guidance counselor and teacher. And I thought that was so interesting because I was like, okay, that says that I'm good at communication and expressing emotion. So is that a designer? Like, you know what I mean? So I was kind of like, you know, why isn't this available? And I, as a career option, and I remember asking my teacher saying, oh, was artist or designer on that list? And they said no. So, you know, it's interesting how I think that the way I found my options were also through research and watching other people, you know, do what I wanted to do. I think James Jean was a big one for me that I saw. He's also Taiwanese, and he was kind of having to tell his parents, you know, that this was the right path for him as well. And I think that he was a huge inspiration for me. So being able to follow his journey, and yeah, that helped me.
I think it's interesting listening to both of you talk, Janine and Jasmine, just about your perspectives. Like I too took one of those like careers courses in high school that was like, what should you be? I'm like regretful to tell you that mine was radio disc jockey, but here we are. But you know, I think that there's something to be said about. So often I hear people, like I was often told as a kid, wow, you have really good problem solving skills, or you're really good at negotiating, or you're really good at mediating, you should be a lawyer. But you know who else has to be a really good like thinker and mediator and negotiating problem solving is designers. But you know, I feel like a lot of guidance counselors, a lot of instructors, a lot of people in post-secondary, and you know, just thinking about the high school system more broadly, they're not really equipped to sort of prepare people for careers in design. And you know, you might get that one or two elective, to Jasmine's point around this, that you can kind of hone in on your skills. But I found that most people were really focusing students in on going into trades and things, right? So I think it's this really weird sort of perspective that perhaps we don't know. And I've noticed in recent years, a lot of our program coordinators at the college are doing a lot of outreach with high schools to go and do visits. This year, we've done a lot of virtual visits to try to have some of those conversations around, you know, if you're a good problem solver, if you like to solve problems, if you like to solve problems creatively through visual means, then design could be a really viable option for you.
I totally agree with that. And it's funny how you mentioned like the high school education is not really equipped with the knowledge to guide people in that direction. I completely agree with that. I spoke with one of my high school guidance counselors recently, just asking her for some questions for some research on one of my projects. And I asked her, how many people actually go into your office asking about a career in the creative industry? And she said, maybe like once every couple months. Like it's very, very, there's not a lot of people going into the arts and asking about it. So I think that's something that kind of needs to change with that.
Awesome. So I know a lot of times when we talk about BIPOC and BIPOC design, a lot of this, what we hear come up is lack of representation. So I'm just going to dive right into the next question. Did you see yourself reflected in design, either behind the scenes or in front of the creations, the actual end product of design? Kathleen, I see you nodding your head.
Yeah. Yeah, I think as you mentioned, there's two sides to this story. There is the representation in the final product, so what the general public consumes, and then there's the representation behind that. So those are the actual people, creating the media, creating the content. I feel like in the past few years, I've definitely noticed that there's a lot more of a push and a drive to have more representation, in the final product itself. So whether that's commercials you see on TV, whether that's print ads, internet ads, I feel like there's definitely a lot more representation. But from what I have noticed, I definitely do think that there still is a lack of representation in the industry itself in terms of the people that are creating the product. I know this is only anecdotal evidence, but I have noticed that from the people that I follow on, ArtStation, different social media feeds, there is such a lack of BIPOC creators, to the point where when I do encounter one, I have actually gone out of my way to message them, because I think it's wild. And they have told me as well, yeah, this is definitely a problem. And, they're just even happy that somebody has noticed it. But I do think that there is a lack of representation behind the scenes. I know that Jasmine's thesis, I believe, was about this, but I did find a study online that was, or I guess a census that was started by the AIGA and Google, that actually noted that 3% of the respondents were BIPOC people. So that's specifically to graphic design, but that is definitely a disproportionate amount of BIPOC people. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's, similar figures across all the fields of design.
For myself, I kind of saw it a different way, where when I think about the people that I follow or the people that I draw inspiration from, I definitely do see that BIPOC designers are represented in a way, just not the way that we would like them to. If we look at the ratio of BIPOC designers in comparison to the majority, it definitely is small. But I think that as, young designers coming up, they go into fields of entrepreneurship or starting their own brands and things like that, and being an impact within their small group of people, and just making an impact in their communities alone. And even for, us as students, any given day on campus where they're representing BIPOC designers, just our presence alone speaks for itself that we're trying to make a change in the field, pursuing a degree in design and education. But yeah, I think even though I feel like I can speak for everyone when I say you don't want to be labeled as a BIPOC designer in the field, you hope that your work speaks for itself. We do have to take on that active role and say that, embrace that role, because people do look up to us, and even though it's not we're not in the big design firms and things like that, we are represented, I feel. Yeah.
100%. I actually agree with all of you on that. And you're leading by example, which is great. Which brings me to my next question. Was the decision to pursue design rooted in a political or social decision to try to reimage the landscape? For any of you? I'm going to start picking people. Michael, I see you turning, Michael.
Yeah, I had to unmute real quick. I can't speak for a lot of people I know, but for me personally, it wasn't really rooted from anything social or political. Like I said, it was based off passion. But I think it definitely was an inspiration when you look at some of our work after some time, when you look at some of the stuff we did as we progressed in our graphic design careers, in a way, time in graphic design. So I wouldn't say it's that there's a political or social reason for me to get into it, but there's definitely an impact from it to where it sort of inspired some of my work or some of the things I've done in terms of design. Yeah.
Yeah, to add to that, I also agree. I feel like my decision to pursue design was never rooted in political or a social decision originally, but I think that you know, as you're in the field and you're working and you see like a lack of representation, start to make projects that do reflect you and, you know, do have your voice behind it, and you fill the void that you think is missing. And I think that that's really important. That's why we need representation. That's why we need, you know, BIPOC designers, because there is so much missing, and we're there to fill that and, you know, have our voice heard. And yeah, so I think that over time the work kind of does end up being socially, you know, and political decisions. So, but I think that does come with time. It didn't start for me, at least, that way.
For sure. Does anyone else want to jump in on that?
Yeah, too. With that, I agree. I think my decision again with going back to where like how I got into design, it didn't really start that way, where I didn't go into design like, oh, I'm going to change the world, and or I'm going to tackle this political problem or this social problem. I think it's something that I've learned throughout my time in design school and just like growing up. Like when I started design school, I was only 18, and now I'm like a few years older. And I've, with all of the unfortunate events happening in the world, especially like this past year, I think that kind of, you get exposed to that over time as you get older, and it's something that you kind of reflect on, and if you so choose to, if you so choose to put that into your work and into your design practices, then that's something that you would do as an individual, and yeah, don't really know until you face the world.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point, Jasmine. And I think from my own perspective, I'm not a designer. I work in and around design. I've made lots of interventions into the world of design, but I'm not a traditionally trained designer. I am very, very passionate about education, obviously. That's where I sort of like to live and work, obviously. But I do think that, you know, the ability to inspire change and social change happens in education in the same ways that it happens in the world of design. I also think it's really interesting. Often we hear students say, you know, I'm not political, or I'm not social, or that's not the driving force for me. And that might not be the sort of initial take, but then when you watch a student sort of go through thesis or start to ask questions about the world and the world that they live in, you kind of get into these like very social and political discussions, right? And, you know, not to plug the year-end show website, but if you go to yes.schooldesign.ca and you look at some of the graduating work, most people are doing projects that are much bigger than them. And it's not really just a profile about them, it's a profile on like, here's a very serious issue, whether it's related to climate change, whether it's related to, you know, equity and gender and race and these kinds of things that are very, very pertinent, that I think that design has an absolutely monumental role to play in impacting. So I think it's interesting to me to hear so many people talk about their perspectives and how they see their role as a designer. And I think with that same sort of token, we're seeing more and more programs and courses focused on like design for social good and design, you know, as a catalyst to change the world and make interventions into making a better world. So I think that the designer's role is paramount in that.
For sure. I'm going to actually take a question from the panel. At this point, it's tied directly into where we're headed next. One of the questions that we got from, I can't quite tell your name, but anyway, what support would you like to see more of in the day-to-day for BIPOC designers?
I'll answer this also for everybody else, but for me personally, I would love to see just more encouragement and support, and that being vocal. Tying back into what I said in the panel, just knowing that somebody sees potential in you and someone is encouraging you to do what you love, no matter like what your race is, to be honest. Just having moral support from somebody is something that I think everybody really needs, and especially like going into a field where you don't really see yourself is pertinent.
Yeah, I agree, Jasmine. I feel like what I talked about with Berkeley Pool as well today was the concept of having a mentor to guide you as well, like having that person that you can rely on and go to. And I think that now that we're so in, technology's evolved so much, like even from when I was in high school, like having platforms like Masterclass and having things like TikTok and LinkedIn, even like LinkedIn Learning, and having these like classes you can just take if you don't know, and you can research all these designers that you may like, and having that kind of support as well, just knowing that, there's someone out there that, can help you with what you're looking for. And I think that what would be really helpful is kind of having a network of creatives that, look like you and think like you, and being able to access that would be something that would be really cool, I think. Just having that at your fingertips. And if there's ever a time where you feel like you don't know the answer to something, or you're worried about, a mistake or something, you can go to these people and ask, like they've been in the situation before, and having that kind of support and would be really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, when I first hear this question, I think the thing that I personally think is that it seems like a huge loaded question. But I think at the end of the day, it's not about, being intimidated by all these big institutions and by all these big ideas. I think ultimately you can just take small actions to support other BIPOC artists. It's first about acknowledging any inequity, and then second, just being able to offer support, offer advice, mentoring, like Janine mentioned. I think it's almost easy in a way to deflect responsibility to other people and other big institutions to, take the first step. But really the first step begins with all of us. And it doesn't have to be a big action. It doesn't have to be a big first step. It's just reaching out, taking care of each other, looking out for each other, and, navigating the world together.
Yeah, I completely agree. This question actually reminded me of how we started, or at least how I started the first month or day of school here at George Brown. I realized that it can be intimidating at first, and Kathleen was right. It's a really loaded question, but being amongst other students and being amongst an environment that's really creative, and you get to see how you match up with other people can be intimidating. Being in that environment, or it's like class after class, can be intimidating, and being creative in that type of space can be intimidating. But at the end of the day, you can be inspired by by the people around you. You can use that to go forward. They will support you as you can support them too. So having that support is really important, I feel like.
Yeah, I feel like mentorship, like everyone else is saying, is such an important thing, and there's so much value in that. Being able to, invest in someone's growth as a creative and just as a person, overall is such a big thing. And like for me personally, like I wouldn't have the same passion that I do now if I didn't have people who invested their knowledge and, their time into seeing me grow as a creative.
Awesome. So Michael mentioned how he felt during his first few days of class, the inspiration, the support from other classmates, and as he entered George Brown. How has your experience been within the classroom? And this is a question for everybody.
It's been great since the first year all the way to now. It's been great. There's a lot of things I learned. There's a lot of students I went to class with different talents, from illustration to the corporate to advertising, with different things that I can do, different things I learned from as well. So it was a really huge learning experience. So it was an amazing experience. And throughout the years, you get to know the ins and outs of certain things. You get to know who to ask if you need help with a certain thing. You get to know what kind of teachers will give you a better insight on certain things. So you have a better connection with everybody around you. And that really helped throughout my time here in George Brown. It made it easier, it made me better, I guess, because I knew what to do in certain situations and I know how to react. Like if I ever wanted something, if I ever wanted help with color palettes, I'll probably ask Jasmine, and she helped me out, stuff like that. So it'll definitely push you forward. So yeah, having that support system like we talked about throughout this experience is really has been a really amazing thing. And Yeah, I'm trying to see if I answered the question clearly. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll jump in as well. My experience, so I'm in a one-year post-grad program. So I have been enrolled in at George Brown for 8 months right now. And it has been especially different considering COVID and the fact that it's all been online. So, you know, my entire community, I haven't actually, I think I met one person from my program, and still it has been an absolutely amazing experience. But like Michael mentioned, the community was definitely a big part of it, especially now when we're, you know, physically isolated. Being able to connect with others was huge. And I think that having the support of my peers and having peers that I know have the same sort of anxieties and fears and hopes and goals has been amazing for me personally. And even from a professional standpoint, just establishing that network of people that have the same professional goals and professional aspirations. The one thing that I wonder if it would have made my experience any different is if there would have been any professors that I could relate to in terms of, so I have 2 BIPOC professors, but if there had been any like female professors or Black professors, I wonder if it would have made it my experience any different, just in the sense of me being able to pick their brain about how they have found the industry for themselves and what challenges they may have faced and how they, how they approached those challenges. But yeah, the experience has been amazing. And I think the support from the community has been great, which is ultimately one of the most important things.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing I forgot to mention, because I thought I was getting a little muffled, was one thing I wanted to sort of point out is how important it was to see, like you said, Catherine, how people reflected to you, especially the teachers. We had a lot of, personally, I had a lot of different teachers that were a big impact in a way, I guess, from Fitz at copywriting to Steve Parker at advertising and copywriting, who gave a big push in terms of knowing what to expect in the future. And they were really amazing teachers and a really great a great reason for me to get to where I am now. But a good example, like Catherine said, to see someone reflected in you is when in art direction 2, I had a teacher, his name was Theo Gibson, and sorry, I almost forgot his last name. Theo Gibson, he was an art director, and me seeing him because he looked like me and he was in a place where I wanted to be in the advertising industry, it sort of felt different than my other teachers. I sort of felt like connected in a way where like that's what I want to be, and sort of like an inspiration. So because of that, the presence of BIPOC professors or like people with BIPOC in the industry is really important to me, at least from my point of view as a student at that time. So going on in the future, looking into the future, if that's available, even better, right? Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I completely agree with you. And through the talks that we've been having at YES this week, although today is the day dedicated to BIPOC designers, local and global, the talks that we've had earlier this week all kind of touched on diversity and inclusion. I had a talk with Mo Bofil yesterday and Ellen Lupton, and both of those talks kind of touched on that and just inclusivity and representation within the industry. And especially with my talk with Mo, and I did a portfolio review with Eunice Joaquin on Monday. Those 2 women that I spoke with are Filipino, and so am I. And that was a very enlightening experience to kind of see somebody that looks like me successful in the industry. And that's something I've personally been trying to prove to myself and to my parents, that, you know, I can be successful in this field. And it was just so different hearing about their experiences and hearing them especially like talk about paving the way and getting a seat at the table. Those are key things that I think I've learned through the talks that we've been having today, especially like BIPOC designers, they kind of have to work twice as hard to get like half the recognition.
Yeah, those were all great points. And I think that it's something that not necessarily everybody thinks of, but it's really daunting and scary to think that, you know, there might not necessarily be a road or a path paved for you. And to know that somebody else has successfully done that and, you know, is happy in their career and successful in their career, it's definitely reassuring, and it lets you know that it is possible, that there is somebody who has done it, and that you aren't alone. And I think just knowing that is enough to feel, you know, reassured and affirmed in your path. And you know, I hope that somebody from a younger generation that wants to go into design is able to see us and see that in all of us as well, and see that there are other people out there that have done it, that may have come from similar backgrounds as them, similar experiences as them, and that it, you know, it isn't a wild, completely, you know, irrational goal in life.
Yeah, I think everyone's touched on some really good points here. I think there's a couple of things for me that I wanted to mention. First, huge shout out to Theo. You know, I met Theo, I think going on 2 or 3 years ago. We were both working with House at the time. For those of you that don't know, House is a sort of social incubator that does a lot of work focused on youth who are creative, who perhaps haven't had a vehicle to express their creations and their knack for creative skills in traditional educational settings. I think that there are lots of opportunities to bring in lots of designers with lots of different backgrounds, lots of different ways of knowing, lots of different ways of showing how they know what they know. I think traditionally education institutions have really been focused on, you know, the right credentials, and does that person have a master's or a bachelor or a PhD, and, you know, what does their career sort of look like? I know that we've thought a lot in the last couple of years about looking at what the industry is looking like now. How can we create better opportunities for BIPOC instructors or folks who might be interested in teaching, and what sorts of opportunities can we integrate across our curriculum to allow for more of those opportunities to exist, whether they're guest lectures, whether they're things like the Yes Speaker series, you know, which I think there's definitely enough traction based on the outpour of support we've had this week to continue to do this throughout the year. It doesn't just have to be 1 year or 1 week at the end to celebrate something. I think it's important to bring folks into classrooms so that, you know, a lot of our student body can see themselves reflected. The reality is that we do have an incredibly diverse student body, and I think that we're remiss to not give more and more opportunities for folks to weigh in, to be in a classroom, so that you can see yourself reflected in the class, but then also when you leave your time at the college, for you to see yourself reflected in the industry and to know, hey, I can reach out to this person because they've probably had some similar experiences to me. So I think that that's been really, really important for me, and I know it's an important thing for a lot of us at the college.
Thank you, Anna Rita. I think that's really wonderful to hear and reassuring. So it's really great. I would like to jump to a question from the panel. Let me find the question. How did your parents feel in regards to, thank you, Amber, from you. So, Jasmine, you're on it.
Yeah, my parents did not handle it well. I was telling this to Anna Rita yesterday. I just finished talking with Mo and Ellen, and I showed them, hey, I just talked to some really like huge designers in my industry. Like this is an amazing thing that I've done. And my mom was like, oh, that's good. Your English is really good. Like that was all that she said to me. That it's very discouraging when you don't get that support from your parents. That's such an important thing to me. And Kathleen mentioned my thesis earlier. My thesis, it focuses on giving resources to BIPOC designers and BIPOC students in the high school range. These resources to have a better conversation with their parents when they go to talk to them, saying like, hey, I want to be a designer, I want to be a photographer, or anything in the creative industry, really. This resource was made, I chose to do my project on this because there is just not a lot of resources out there that are available, and it's very hard to search for these resources as well. With like when I was in high school, I didn't really know what to search for, and it was very difficult to kind of convince my mom that this is something I can actually do and something that's very viable. So yeah, it's just a very difficult thing to kind of talk to your parents about.
Yeah, for sure. We have a comment here that we think is really powerful and very truthful. Cultural parental pressure is definitely a thing. Have any of you experienced that at all? Some smiles and nods. Mom and dad, stop watching or watch.
I mean, definitely. It's just the answer to that is, at least for me, is sort of kinda, because my parents, at least for me, my parents wanted me to be successful like every other parent and be okay and be safe in the future and be secure and be good. But at the same time, their vision of the world is really limited in a way where it's like, okay, you're either going to be a doctor, engineer, lawyer, or something along those lines. So I guess it sort of roots back to how graphic design at least didn't have that much recognition, didn't have that much light to show that, hey, this is actually a reliable or viable option for anybody. So them not knowing that sort of led to that. So the reason I say sort of kinda is because they still wanted to support me, but they weren't so sure about the field I was going into. So it was like, okay, if you're gonna be good at it, all right, cool. As long as something good happens out of it. So it's like weird because it's not like the same support, but it's still support. So you don't know how to react out of it, but teaching them and showing them the many options and the many directions they can go and how successful potentially I can be being in it and in the future sort of convinces them in a way. I know it's hard for most people than what happened to me, but it was easier to convince doing that than anything else, at least in my experience.
Yeah, definitely. And something I want to add to that is I think the reason why parents aren't really supportive of this, and this is something that I found in my research and interviewing people for my thesis, is they're scared of us becoming starving artists. And it's kind of a hard pill to swallow. It's like, we're not gonna starve. We're not gonna like struggle financially just because we're doing something that's unconventional. And that kind of stems from just seeing people in other fields like nursing, doctoral, or like as a lawyer. Like for example, like Filipinos are always really going into nursing, and they see that as a representation of success, and they see that and they trust that. So it's like, okay, they're successful in this, then you should also do this. And they don't really have the space to accept success in design and the creative industry.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jasmine. Sorry, I just see the new question that's up. This actually has to do with what I was going to say. My dad, he is kind of the same way as Jasmine was saying, was like, there's no like, I'm proud of you. There's no like, good job. It's like, okay, you're doing that, great. What's for dinner or something? You'll just drop the subject. So, and I think that for me, it comes from a cultural thing of like expressing emotion. But I also think it's like when you're talking to your parents about this kind of thing, like I think what helped me was showing my emotion and how much I really cared about, creating. And I think I even made like a PowerPoint presentation for my dad, being like, this is why I should be a designer. Like, look at all these people that have become designers. Like, they're doing really great. So, and I also used to, we lived in the country, out in the country in Cobourg, Ontario. So every time we come to Toronto, I'd look up art shows to take my dad to be like, look, there's this artist that's going to be in Toronto. Let's go to their art show so I can show you like what it is to be an artist versus, what your perception of this, again, starving artist or someone that's going to struggle. Because I remember when I did tell my parents that what I wanted to do is be an artist, they're like, oh, well, I guess you're not going to be paying our bills and everything. So it's just removing that narrative, right? That, we're not going to, succeed financially, because that's not true. Like it's just outdated and it's not true. So yeah, to jump on what Jasmine was saying about that.
I think it's really funny that you said you made your dad a PowerPoint, because I literally did the same thing, trying to convince him that it was a good idea to go into design. And I think especially if, if your parents are immigrants, they've come here for a better life, and they've worked all their lives, to give you all this opportunity, you tell them you want to be a designer, they think you have absolutely lost your marbles, which is what my dad thought. And I think it's honestly because there isn't a lot of resources out there that let you know how many different opportunities there are in design. Even within the design industry itself, there's so many different jobs that you can do. There's so many different venues that you can take, and you can be extremely successful in all of them. And I think that just because it isn't necessarily a profession where there's, that much info outwardly available, you have to sort of go looking for it. I do think that a lot of parents think that, like Janine and Jasmine and Michael were saying, that you won't be successful, which isn't necessarily true, but you're definitely right, Christine. You do have to, sort of let them know what different options are available.
Was that PowerPoint thing like a collective thing? Like all of our parents just came together and were like, okay, if any of our kids go into the creative industry, we need to make them do a PowerPoint. Because my mom said the exact same thing to me, just like, make a PowerPoint, explain to me why you're not going to be dying on the street starving.
I did the same thing for sleepovers.
Did that too.
But how good did your PowerPoint look with your design skills? That's the more important thing.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
We need people to design presentations. That's the thing.
I have a thing to sort of add on to this, and I'm not, this is not in defense of parents, so I'm not going to say that, but I did notice that this is the case across a lot of industries, design, because I spend the most of my time with designers, especially young designers, and given how diverse our student body is, I think that this is an issue that many of our students face. As someone who, I spent a long time in education, and I think that would have probably made a lot of people's parents very proud, but my parents were like, why don't you have a job yet? What's going on here? Like, how long are you going to defer starting life? And I found it really difficult not to be able to have conversations with my parents. My parents, I'm Portuguese, we weren't born here, and my parents weren't really educated past the 4th grade. And so it became very difficult for me to try to advocate for myself and the education that I wanted so that I could do some of the things later on in life that I wanted. And I found that it became very difficult to talk to my parents about these things as I got older, because I think you get to a point where you maybe start to know a little bit more about the world than your parents in some ways. And I think that's really intimidating for a parent and can be really overwhelming. And I think when they don't speak the same language as you, and talking about like language of the world and language of like the design space, because you know more about that space than them, it can be really, really intimidating for them. So this is something that I've said to a lot of students in the last, like 5 years, which is like, you have to find your community. You have to build your own community. Sometimes support comes from, lots of different places that you weren't expecting. But I think it's really important to like look to your peers, look to your mentors, start to foster those relationships. Ultimately your parents are always going to be proud of you. They just, probably won't ever say out loud, I'm very proud of you for doing this very important thing. But I do think that there's lots of people that are proud of you, and building that base and also telling other people that you're proud of them is a really good way for when someone is proud of you, for them to feel comfortable telling you, hey, I'm really proud of you. You did this amazing thing. So I encourage you to build your communities and to look for other spaces as well.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. That's why I think that the whole concept of mentorship is so important. It's important for us to be able to make sure that other people that were, potentially in similar situations, or even if they were in completely different situations, that they know that there are other people who understand where they want to go, understand, the struggles they may have, and that we and other people are there to support them and to give them advice, to, lift them up. If anything, my one goal after graduating would be to know that I have helped my peers succeed, and that I have the opportunity to help, people entering the program in years after succeed. because I think that's so important. And personally, before I entered this program at George Brown, I messaged a bunch of previous grads, and they were all, every single person I messaged replied to me, you know, super long, huge paragraphs, and was super forthcoming and willing to help me out. And that really helped affirm my decision to apply to the program. And I would hope that anybody in future years who wants to do the same for me feels comfortable doing that.
I'm going to add to that, actually. I think to what Anarita said about building your own community, I think it's so important to look to other people who can give you that support, and also be supportive of yourself and proud of yourself that you know, you're doing what you're doing. Because, you know, fortunately, my parents came around to like me pursuing design, but a lot of parents don't, and it's so disheartening and unfortunate. And I just hope that parents do eventually come around, and that students wouldn't have to face this struggle and this strain on the parent-child relationship. Yeah, I think it's so important to just like be there for yourself and be there for others when, because you never know that somebody is going through that.
100%. I know everyone's spoken about the concept of mentors and your support network. I also think it's really important to have a champion and to be a champion for someone else. And by champion, yes, it's partly a bit of a mentor role, but it's also the kind of role where you help push someone forward, you help them find opportunities, you help promote them as well. And I think that's really important and fundamental. It's one of the things that I wish I had in my career. And I try to do it for other folks. So one way, again, to do that, to speak to what Anarita said earlier, if you're someone else's champion, if someone's promoting your work or you start promoting theirs and you start highlighting your friends and your friends' successes and all of that sort of thing, that comes around full circle. And that's more than just mentorship. That's really like being a champion is incredibly important, and finding someone that will be your champion is also important. So I'll also urge you to look for someone to play that role for you as well. Next question. It's been a while. So we spoke about parents and our different cultural approaches and everything else that happens. How might we better prepare our youth with tools and the language to talk to their parents about design as a career path? So I know we have the idea of the PowerPoint presentations, but what else can we do?
I'll start this off. I think as designers, we have this voice and this power to use our talents to communicate these messages, like communicate that, you know, BIPOC designers should be supported, and that like this is a viable career path and a viable education. And shout out to my thesis. I'm going to show a little bit of, but this is like part of my thesis, and this is essentially like a tool that could work to distribute the resources and be something to aid the conversation of like being creative in the industry. If anyone wants to add.
Yeah, I was trying to unmute again. Yeah, I feel like it's so slow. But yeah, I agree with Jazz. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of recognition in terms of graphic design like we talked about. So talking about it in the first place, I think, is really important. Us doing stuff like this, being in the panel, and talking more about it and giving it more recognition, I think is really important. I think the support system, like Jazz said, is also important. Like everybody mentioned, is also important. There are different types of approaches, yes. But for example, we were talking a while ago about LinkedIn for creatives. So something like that would be dope, I feel like, in terms of having this community that will watch each other's back and like will help each other out and champion, like Tony said, and be a mentor and push each other so we can get to where we want to be and be the best creative person we can be. So yeah, I totally agree.
Awesome. Does anyone else want to jump in? Anyone else have anything they want to add to this one?
I think that was really well said. I don't really have anything to add.
Michael will seal the deal. Okay, so another question I have. What are your aims and hopes for design education, and what would you like to see reflected going forward? I'm looking at everyone to answer this one, so I am going to go around the table with this one, starting with Jesse.
I guess my hopes for design education, or just the field in general, is that we create this community of inclusivity, no matter what like race you are. I hate to say it, but like I don't like the idea of being labeled as something. I rather feel that like my work should speak for itself. And I think that starting from design education, we should make that a point that your work does speak for itself, and we should be able to support people in however way we can, whether that be through mentorship, through representation of people of different races and things like that, or just even in curriculum itself, seeing people that look like us and learning from their experience. So things like that, I think, are something that we could improve on within design and the design industry overall.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and everything that you've said, Jesse, is pertinent in to create change within our industry, and just like having that representation, having like these tools and resources for that. For myself, I think my aims and hopes for design education is just I would say introducing it at a younger age, like in elementary school, or even in high school as well. Just be more open and advertising it more, that it's a viable thing to pursue, as well as I really wish that nobody has to go through what I had gone through with my parents in trying to go into design, because it does put a strain on your relationship with your parents when you kind of butt heads with the things that you want in your life, and it's definitely not fun. So I really hope that parents in the future will be more accepting of it, and get to be more knowledgeable about the viability of it, and for our students to not have to feel afraid to go to their parents when they want to do something unconventional, or like against what they kind of think their parents are hoping for them to do.
Yeah, these are all great answers. I agree with all of them. And I also hope that going forward in design education, there's more of an emphasis on providing opportunities for those folks that perhaps may not have the same opportunity as we do. I do think to a certain extent that being able to study design is a luxury, because like we've all touched on, earlier in this panel, a lot of us come from backgrounds where our parents have, struggled and fought and sacrificed to be able to, give us more opportunities than they have had. And I do think that sometimes, announcing that you want to study design is maybe a little bit of a letdown to them. But at the end of the day, if you have a passion, you have a passion. And just because you don't have the means to be able to study something, you don't have the opportunity to be able to study something, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be able to. And ultimately, I think at the end of the day, diversity is a huge contributor to innovation. You need people from different experiences, you need people from different backgrounds and different perspectives to be able to, innovate and create and change. And so I hope that we really emphasize the fact that we continue to create more opportunities for folks.
Yeah, I think my hopes for design education and where I'd like design to go, I agree with what everyone has said. Like, those are all really great points. And I think for me, it's really focusing on BIPOC artists, even in art history, like not learning about any of them or having it as a separate category, I think is wrong. And I don't understand why we were so focused on, Western art. And I feel like that was really what I learned in high school. And there wasn't really a chance for me to learn about other artists unless it was, an afterthought or on my own terms. And I think the other thing was having more open dialogue about design can be growing up. Because I think that, you know, in high school and when you're trying to figure out what you want to do, I think design is so like one way at the beginning, and you don't know about all these other options that you have. And I didn't learn about them until literally I was already in university, and I was like, oh, I can do this and this and this. I had no idea that those were even options. And the third is creating confidence in students to stick up for themselves and to avoid imposter syndrome when we get to this point. Because I think that, you know, when your parents don't believe in you, and then you start not to believing in you, and then when you get to the stage of, you know, actually creating, you're like, am I even good enough? No one believes in me. Like, why would, you know, why is my work great? You know, so I think it's like a cycle that needs to stop, because it starts from the very beginning of, this is not a good idea, and then you start manifesting that, and then your work starts to reflect, maybe it isn't good, you know, maybe I'm not good. And then, so I think just avoiding that in general would really help, and starting at the very beginning. And but yeah. Yeah.
Well, for me, it's really similar to what Kathleen and Janine said, is to generalize it as much as possible, right? So from a younger age, or like high school, even, when you start thinking about your future careers, you shouldn't have to be limited to this direction where it's like, okay, you could be a doctor, you could be in social sciences, you could be an engineer, and all these things, where like, when like design is also a good option, but it's not represented enough. It's not given enough light. So it's because of that there's not a lot of recognition of it, and not knowing which directions or how many different ways design can go, like Janine said. So giving it as much recognition to where nobody has to make a PowerPoint for their parents anymore, you know. So where every parent would be like, okay, this is actually a good option. Like, it's okay. Like, it's not, being a doctor is fine, but being a designer is also fine too. It shouldn't be like this like lower tier type of thing. So getting design to a point where it's that recognized and it's that generalized, where everybody will look at it and be like, hey, that's also a great option I want to go at. I have a creative side and I want to grow that part of me. So having that happen, I think is a good hope and aim that I have for this education.
Yeah, I guess I'll cap this one off. I think for me, it's I was writing because every time I had something, someone would take the thing I was going to say. So I think it's important to echo everything, Jesse, to your point around, you know, wanting to be a designer who is designer, period, not, you know, BIPOC designer or designer focused on this. I think that that's a really good point. Jasmine, to sort of your point around giving youth more options, giving youth the tools and the language, something that Kathleen, that you echoed there, was sort of emphasizing what the options are. Same thing with Janine and Michael. And I think that for me, it's about being more open as an educator. So I'm thinking about it from the other side. And one of the things that, this is probably like the 5th time I've said this at some point this week to someone, but I'm really focused right now on normalizing changing your mind about something. And I think as someone who's taught, I've been teaching for about 10 years now in varying capacities. I think for me, when I look back at probably like the first couple of texts and the first couple of theorists that I was pulling from in courses I was teaching, I would say the bulk of them were probably white men. And I think now I realize like there's a lot more literature to pull from, a lot more approaches, a lot more methodology. So normalizing that there's more than one way to do something. And just because it looks very different than how everyone else is doing it, it doesn't mean that it's wrong. So I think for me, that's the big one. And a couple of people have mentioned in the chat, you know, how do you talk to your parents about this kind of thing? You know, maybe it's not a bad idea for us to email this panel to all of the prospective students for next year and say, hey, these are conversations lots of people are having. You know, I've said this conversation, I think it was Michael that said it earlier. My parents weren't really interested in like the whole conversation that didn't include doctor, lawyer, you know, engineer, that kind of thing. And so I think it is important to be able to have conversations with people. And I didn't know that other people were having that same kind of struggle until pretty recently. So I think it's important to normalize those conversations. So yeah, for me, it would be more open and normalize changing your mind.
I love it. Henry, getting some claps on the screen, on the side panels. This is, you guys have all been amazingly wonderful. I actually want to jump to a question that we have from the audience. Where to go? There you go. What's the most positive experience that's happened during your education that reinforced your choice in career? I can hum and sing while you think.
I can go first this time. The most positive experience I've seen is when I saw what I designed being applied in real life. So we had this course in my second year called Studio Lab, where we worked with real clients, and we took what they wanted and then made it for them to design. So doing that and then working with everybody and then seeing that what we end up making can be used in the future by them sort of reinforced it for me. Especially now after my internship in my last year, I was working as an intern doing some graphic design stuff. And then after seeing what I worked on in LinkedIn and the social media posts and seeing it applied and then being towards an event or wherever they're doing and it being applied sort of reinforced the fact that like, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to see my work out there in the real world. And because I'm in advertising, that's sort of it's a big deal, I guess, because I'm thinking of it like, okay, what if I made like a major advertisement poster or a digital advertising campaign, and I see it everywhere, from train stations to like Dundas Square and everywhere, and I can say like, hey, I knew that, right? So that kind of effect sort of put the stamp on it, at least for me.
Go next. I love that, Michael. Yeah, I definitely resonate with that, and I think, especially when you're a younger designer, like seeing your work printed for the first time, or like if a teacher chooses to show your work in class, it's such a reassuring experience. For myself personally, the most positive experience that's happened during my education that reinforced my choice in career happened recently. I'll say two of my experiences. So during my thesis research, I was trying to interview different people, industry professionals, educators, and students, like with their experience within design. And an old friend actually contacted me, Cyan, and I went to high school with her. She ended up going into psychology, I think, at Ryerson. But she messaged me and she was like, hey, I've seen your work. I've been following your work and it's really inspired me. Like, I want to pursue design, and I want to ask you some questions on like how to do that. And I'm kind of scared to talk to my parents about this. Like, any tips? Can we have a chat? And like, I saw myself in her as she asked me that, and I was like, this is my chance to like alleviate that and not let her go through that experience that I went through. And it really reinforced why I went into design, and inspires me to like for what I want to do in the future, just like teach and mentor people and be support that I didn't have. So there was one. Second one was actually this YES committee. This committee has done so much for me. Like, it's carried me through thesis, 2 jobs, a relationship ending. Like, it really helped carry me through, and it inspired me and reminded me of why I love doing design and like how fun design can be. So thank you to Anna Rita specifically, and Yaz and Mary and everybody else in the committee who has participated, and everybody here who's participated in our activities all week. So thank you.
You're welcome. I think it's also like, give yourself a huge pat on the back. You know, it seems like YES is a massive event, and it is, and it was definitely only made possible by the support of a lot of hardworking students like Jasmine. So if you didn't get attacked on social media about signing up for every event and portfolio review, etc., and you know, there is absolutely strength in the reach of Jasmine. We kind of had this joking thing that all year that Jasmine was School of Design's social media influencer, but it's true. So I think it's important to give kudos there. It's good to see it come to life.
I'm gonna cry again.
Okay, so As a heads up, we do have a few more questions to go through that we have, but there's also one from the audience that I think is a really great question to ask. So we may go a little over, and I think we're all okay with that, but I think this is a really great question. What advice would you give your younger self? Again, I love
that RuPaul's Drag Race question on the second last the penultimate episode where they hold up your baby photo and they're like, what advice would you give to young Janine? And you're like, oh God, I'm gonna fall apart. Anyways, good luck answering this one.
Does anyone want to go first? I would say, honestly, I was actually asked this question recently. I did a podcast and I got really emotional and I answered this question. But I think that the advice I would give my younger self would just be, don't worry about what everyone else is doing. If you're confident in what you love and what you do, you can do it. It's a mindset, right? If you tell yourself that this is what you're going to do and this is how you don't know how you're going to do it, but this is what you want to do and you're passionate. And I think that will really show. And I think, like I said before, as designers, we do struggle with this sense of, am I good enough? No one else is believing in me. You have to be strong in yourself and open to criticism as well. I think that when I started off in my career, I was really precious about my work. And, I didn't like when people would critique me, but honestly, that's the most important thing of it is how you grow. And for me, the most important lesson I learned when I was younger was my art teacher had given us this assignment where we had worked for a month on it. He said, do whatever you want, create whatever you want. And then we showed up a month later with our pieces and he shows up with these buckets of white paint and goes, okay, now paint over it. He didn't even want to look at it. We had spent months on it or a month on it. And it taught me the value of not being precious about my work. And, it taught me that not everyone's going to like what you do and that's okay. And you have to be strong and, so yeah, that's kind of what I would say to myself is don't be precious about it, but do believe in yourself because you got it and don't worry about what other people think. Yeah.
Kathleen, I see you smiling.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think similar to what Janine was saying, you just have to, I think everybody when they first start out is really anxious and really insecure about their work, and there's a lot of imposter syndrome. So what I would say to my younger self is just, you're going to feel anxious, you're going to feel insecure, you're going to feel like an imposter. That's normal. And you just have to learn how to take that constructive criticism. And you have to understand that when you first start out, you may have the vision, but you may not necessarily have, the technical skills, the theory to be able to execute what you want. And that's completely fine. And that's completely normal. And one day you'll get there. And at first you may not like your work, you may not be happy with it, but eventually you will be. And it's all part of the process of learning. And it's normal to feel that way. It doesn't mean you're a bad designer, you're a bad artist. It's just part of the, the growing pains that you have to go through.
I'll answer this one next, and I hope everybody gets a chance to answer this as well. But I think I spoke with Anna Rita about this the other day, just about parental support, and that's been the hardest pill for myself to swallow. Now, I'm only realizing now after 3 years of design school that I don't need to prove anything to anyone, and especially to my parents. Although your parents love you and they support you no matter what, sometimes they don't really show that in the best way or know how to say it. And it's hard to deal with it yourself, kind of similar to what Janine said earlier, if your parents don't believe in you and you start to not believe in yourself, and then that manifests in your work. So I think I would tell my younger self, you don't need to prove anything to anyone. You're gonna do great things, and yeah, just don't worry about anything. Just trust yourself and believe in yourself. As cheesy as it sounds.
Not cheesy at all.
I would say the same thing, or I guess it sounds the same way. But my advice would be to believe in yourself no matter what throughout the whole way. Because in the past 3 years, I've seen a lot of things. I've seen a lot of people get intimidated in the first day and then not believe in themselves, and then not lasting as long as other students. I've seen times where people felt like whatever they're creating is not good enough. Whatever they're creating is not going to make the cut. They're not going to get good grades, stuff like that. I've seen some people, especially not to like make it direct, but like I've seen a lot of people that I started with not be there right now in my third year. So seeing how, even though it's life happens and that's how it works, if you believe in yourself from the beginning, if you believe in your creativity, if you believe that you can do this, if you believe that what you decided to do, your goal, your creative path is what you wanted to do, and just that's what you want to do, just fight for it. And no matter what, it'll be bumps, it'll be tough, but no matter what, as long as you're creative, as long as you believe in your work, as long as you get better and better, you'll get there. Because once you fail, once you fall down, you just get back up and get back at it, right? So that's the best advice I can give.
Yeah, for myself, kind of like what everyone else is saying, but like what I would tell my younger self is to not compare myself to others. I think that's a huge thing that I struggled with even before going into college. And I find that it does stunt my creativity when I am comparing myself to people who, aren't even on the same level as me. They've been in the industry for like, 10 plus years. You're comparing yourself to people of like that stature. But like, I think it's important to just live in that moment that you're in and, taking away whatever you can learn to grow as a person every day, So, yeah.
Awesome. No one asked me anything, but I'm gonna jump in here. One of the things I read, I think I saw this on a wall and when I was in grade 7 on the bathroom wall, and I started to make sense when I hit my 20s. One of the things that I would tell my younger self is always be yourself, because who else is better qualified? So I think that's a really important thing as well. Moving along, my question for everybody. If you had to give me one word to talk about how you would improve your journey in design, what would it be? One word.
Well, I can start. I think I would say transparency. Transparency in the sense that it's not always going to be easy, and there's definitely going to be days where you want to quit and you think that your work sucks and you suck. And also transparency in the sense that perhaps the industry isn't where we want it to be right now in terms of inequity. And, that's okay. I think those are all important things to talk about. And the more we talk about them, the more we, acknowledge them and hopefully work towards improving all of them.
I'm gonna bounce to you, Janine.
Okay. One word to describe what can improve. I would say something that came up a lot today, which is narrative. Like the whole narrative around being a designer, like what does that mean and what can it mean? Because right now I feel like, well, I'm not sure, but back when I was looking at becoming a designer, it was, okay, well, you're not gonna, be making money. You're not gonna be doing anything great. You're just gonna be a starving artist, So I think changing the narrative around what a designer is, what they can be, what a designer looks like. So I think that for me was the main thing that I would like to see improve overall. But yeah, narrative, my answer.
I like those answers from Kathleen and Janine so far. I feel like I sound like a broken record when I say support. Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I would love to see improved is just like support for others, support systemically within our education, support towards your peers and yourself. I think it's hard to be there for yourself, but if you could be there for others, then that makes such a huge difference.
Yeah, definitely. I think one word I can use is what I've been saying this whole time. It's recognition. So recognizing that graphic design or design in general is bigger than people think it is. It's bigger than what parents assume it is. We're not giving design enough recognition so that nobody has to do a PowerPoint, because I think that's still ridiculous. But getting to a point where it's still recognized, where like nobody has to do a PowerPoint, you just know what it is. You know that it's a great, you know it's a creative side of things. You're not going to do something on place. You're not going to end up something bad. You're just going to it's going to be something great. It's going to be it's going to be something amazing for whoever receives it. So yeah, giving it enough recognition to where that's going to be the narrative, like yeah, to said as well.
Yeah, I would choose the word representation. I think it's great that we all come from different backgrounds and experiences, and I think it's important that we do voice those experiences with others, being able to just inspire others to, you know, create or pursue their dreams and whatever they want to do in life. And I think that can be done through, you know, our work or the projects that we do, or even just in the way that we interact with one another on a daily basis. So, yeah.
I'm going to go and I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to use 2 words that might have a hyphen too. I don't know. But gassing up is my word, which is like really weird. But like, this is something that people talk about all of the time. It costs nothing to gas up your friends. It costs nothing to talk about how amazing this creative that you like just met is. And I noticed this week in the behind the scenes sessions, when we would do the speaker series, I would often introduce the student to, you know, Ellen Lupton or Mo or whoever the designer was. And I would say, this is, you know, 30-year student. They worked on this amazing graphic design project. This is what their thesis work is like. And I saw the body language and the student's face like completely change. And it cost me nothing to do that. It took me no time to do that. And I was speaking the truth, but I do think there's an opportunity to gas up your friends. You know, it's my favorite thing to see on Instagram when someone says, hey, you should follow this incredible brand. They're doing these really amazing things. That's how I found out about the stuff that Janine was doing. I don't know if it was you that shared it, Tony, but it came up on my feed. The way that I learned about the stuff that Jasmine's been doing, same thing. I learned about Kathleen's work through JP, who's our coordinator for concept art. I learned about Michael's work through Jasmine. I learned about Jesse's work through Jasmine. Like, it costs nothing, and none of you knew that this was happening, but you know, it's these small subtleties that I think keep the design community thriving. So my advice is gas up your friends. It's real important.
100%. I will say that Anna Rita stole my wording, except my word is champion, but she fully described it just like that. So we're going to start gassing up our champions, right? Awesome. So we heard from all of you transparency, narrative, support, recognition, and representation. Having said that, I think it's a perfect segue because you're all being absolutely wonderful. I think this is a really great time for you to showcase some of your work. So it's great that we've heard your opinions as students of George Brown, but let's see some of your work. Who wants to go first? Don't make me pick again. Jesse's like, no. Okay, let's go with, there you go.
Okay, I guess I'm going first. So you all kind of saw that box that I was holding. Yeah, this is my thesis. This is my baby from the last 5 months. It opens up like this. My sister thought it was like kind of a mind control thing. But yeah, this is what I wish I had when I was, oh my God, I can see myself on the big screen. It's so weird. This is what I wish that I had talking to my mom back in 2016, 2017, when I wanted to be a designer. And it's just like kind of everything that I wish I had to explain what graphic design is, because I didn't really know, but I knew I wanted to do something creative. So in this box, I don't have the book yet, which I'll show some mock-ups of it. It has a book that explains everything about graphic design, what it is, how much graphic designers make, what the industry is like, what schools you can go to. Like, it touches on the lack of representation in the industry and why having representation is important. So there's that book. It also has like a bunch of resources at the back of just like all the things that I've referenced in my research. So there's that, and then there is a poster, which when I said you won't be a starving artist, I meant it. It says you won't starve. Apparently, you won't part, but it says you won't starve, and it kind of it explains all of the misconceptions within the design industry. So you know, being a starving artist, that art is design, or that anybody can really do design. It takes a certain skill set and certain interest to go into design. So it touches on that. On top of that, I did a call for submissions in February of this year for BIPOC designers. You can see them here. I curated this work because, as we've said during this whole call, representation is so important, and it's important to put that in the forefront when you're like going into a field when you don't really have anybody to look up to. So I created some designs from some local and global artists who I'm so indebted to. I'm so grateful that they were able to participate in this. So there's 10 designs here that you can hang up on your wall, and then you have like their image and a little bio about them, so you can reach out to them or you can follow more of their work. On top of that, it's just like some promotional stuff, some stickers, because, you know, when you're going into a field that you don't really know anything about, you want to feel inspired and feel, yeah, just like excited to go into it. And it also comes with a tote bag. It's upside down because they printed it the wrong way, but it comes with a tote bag branded with the same stuff. So there's that. And then I'll just like quickly go through the thing that I have, the representation. Like, oh shoot, is this? Oh, okay, there. Yeah. So there, there's some of my research from it and like kind of the ideas that I had going with it. Some questions that I had. How can we change the narrative of a starving artist? Something that we've touched on in this talk. Where is it? Okay. Yeah. So then this was like some of my prototyping, just seeing what kind of sizes that I can go with my print material, and then like a mock-up of everything. This is what the book would look like. It's more mock-ups of the boxes and like my die-line for it, and the branding for it. I tried to go with something exciting, but also speaks towards what design is. It's very, it can be graphic, it can be typographic. And there's also, yeah, this is all the contents of the box. And then some spreads from the book that I was talking about earlier. So yeah, education institutions within Toronto, how do I become a designer, helpful resources, and like how much do graphic designers make, some close-ups of the poster and stickers, and that's it for me. So I don't want to take up too much time. Everybody else has some amazing work to show.
Thank you, Jasmine. That was awesome. There's quite a few comments coming in here for you. I love this. Wow, striking. This should be given to high school students to show their parents. There you go. So thank you.
Great job, Jasmine. I want one. All right, I guess I'm going next. Okay, let's see here. All right, hi everyone. My name is Janine Kwok, and I founded Auto the Label. So Auto essentially started from, I'm someone that suffers from an autoimmune condition, and growing up, I felt that, you know, I was actually diagnosed when I was 15, which is fairly young, and I really didn't have any resources to reach out to in terms of, you know, getting information, diet, exercise. Like, you know, I would go to the hospital and get my meds, and then that was really it. They would like send me on my way, and being that young and having all these symptoms and no one really to reach out to was pretty daunting at that age. So and this year I had my major project with Tony, and she asked us, you know, what is a problem that you could solve with design, and what would that be? So I started to think about my own journey with what I struggle with, and so I founded Auto. So right now Auto is working as a loungewear brand, but we are trying to develop an app where people with chronic conditions can go and meet people with the same conditions, and really form a community around, you know, awareness and possible treatments that they can do outside of just medication. So just creating this community of people that with similar illnesses in order to create connections and build friendships and help each other in their journeys together. So I'll just go through what we have. This is our Instagram. We're actually launching these silk scarves that I created. Hoping everyone can see my screen. I'm hoping everyone can. But yeah, so this is our latest thing that we're doing now. I love silk scarves, and I've always tried to create them, and it just saw a perfect opportunity to do it. So yeah, right now we're just functioning as a loungewear brand. I can go through some of the videos here. This is my grandma Shu. She's from Taiwan, and she actually came to Canada, and with not a lot of money, and she had to find a job right away. So she became a seamstress, and she has been retired for about 20 years now. And when I told her about Otto, she was so excited because she finally got to sew again. So she's been like really, really supportive of me. So that's been really great to see. And yeah, so we're really just focused on creating positive affirmations around autoimmunity because it's such a daunting and isolating illness. So just creating a community that's open about talking about illnesses. And yeah, so this is Otto. I can go through some more things here. So yeah, this is some of our crew necks that we have, and all of the proceeds from these sales go to people with autoimmune conditions. So right now we're working with Lupus Ontario, but we're hoping to get more partnerships down the road with Diabetes Canada, for example. But yeah, that is Otto.
Thank you, Janine. That's pretty amazing and awesome. The part about your grandma, oh my gosh, that really touched everybody. That's super sweet.
Yeah, she's so sweet.
Yeah, that's awesome. Oh, there you go. Shout out in the chat.
I also have some real life examples here I forgot to show. So I realized I was on camera. But yeah.
There you are. Perfect. And who's up next? Kathleen.
Yes. So this is me up next. Let me just gather my window. So this you can find on the amazing Yes website. But this is basically just a sample of the different projects that I did this year. So I still have to do my thesis in this last semester of school. But this is some of the work I've done so far. One of the things that I hope to do in my thesis is I'm actually planning on having a Black protagonist. And I mainly am doing that because I've noticed that I don't really see that a lot in mainstream video games. And I hope that we can eventually get to the point where we just have a character be seen as a protagonist rather than as like a token character, which I feel like happens a lot these days. But basically I'm designing the characters that I would love to see eventually and take the protagonist stage in mainstream video games.
That's pretty awesome. It's really great to see this kind of work. So thank you for sharing. Those are pretty cool. I actually wish I had some of those outfits, but yeah. Perfect. Yep, there you go. There's some of your comments. Incredible work, says Christy Jones.
Oh, thank you.
And who do we have next? Jesse.
Oh, mine. All right. So yeah, this was my thesis project that I worked on this year. It's called Bloom. The whole idea behind it, when I was kind of thinking of an idea, was just reflecting on my own experience as a creative growing up here in Pickering, which is like 30 minutes outside of Toronto. And like growing up, I didn't really have the resources or the spaces that I needed or wanted to grow as a creative outside of high school classes, which in itself was pretty bad. But yeah, a lot of the classes that I did take at local galleries and things like that, I found that they lacked training or they just weren't, they didn't have what I was looking for in the space. So I created Bloom to kind of combat those and address those issues. The idea behind it was to create like a local creative space that would be founded in like different communities around the GTA under the brand. And yeah, it would just be a smaller community-based space for people to go, as particularly young creatives, and just grow it through mentorship, through workshops, things like that. Anything that would help them grow as a creative. So the first thing that I did do was I created a brand book. I felt that was like the most effective way for me to communicate the overall theme of Bloom. So it has everything from like color uses to the brand mark, illustration pattern, things like that. And then how those things can be translated onto different brand applications. So we have like magazines, things that could be sold as merchandise within the space. And then also social media application and web as well. And then we have like poster as well. And then I also want to think of a way that would show or speak to the youth best on how we could communicate our overall mission and the theme behind Bloom. So I went with creating a promo video. So I'll show you the teaser. So yeah, that's my thesis project. That's what I've been working on all this whole year. But yeah, if you want to see the rest of the project, feel free to check out my profile. And yeah.
Tony, you were on mute.
Good thing I was for that last part too.
Well, we got through this whole panel with not having to say you're muted. So,
but I ruined it.
We're so close.
Jesse, I was saying, Jesse, that was awesome. I see that you're having comments about, I can see the energy, and I can for sure see the energy in that logo. I can actually even hear the like sound demonic for it the minute I see it. So that's pretty great. Thank you so much. And next we have Michael, last but not least. Ha, you're muted.
Whoa. And at the end, everyone is muted.
Yeah. Yeah, see? I hope that made you feel better, Tony. But this is from my portfolio website. One of the questions we were asked earlier was if our decision to get into graphic design had any social or political reasons. I said that it didn't have any social or political reasons for me, but it did inspire me in the work I did. So this is what I'm going to show you guys. One of the works I did that was inspired by some social and political reasons. I did a poster series in advertising for Black Lives Matter. I'm just going to open one of them so you can see my screen. So the idea I had behind this poster series is to show a series of posters by giving situations that happened in the past, the stories that we know in the past, and asking a rhetorical question to sort of give a clear reason or a clear understanding of what Black Lives Matter is all about. It is about all lives matter. Like, we understand all lives matter, but Black Lives Matter because, for example, in this case, is walking home a crime? No, but Trayvon's unfortunate situation led to this. So a poster series inspired by this kind of mindset led to this. So, for example, this one is for Trayvon. This one is for Breonna Taylor. The rhetorical question being asked is sleeping in your own home a crime? And as you can see, each one of these posters has the chant that Black Lives Matter had for each one of them. So say her name for Breonna Taylor. We are Trayvon for Trayvon Martin. And this is I Can't Breathe for George Floyd. And the rhetorical question in this is working as a truck driver a crime? So all of these posters, as you can see, I put in a mock-up to show you how it can be applied in the real world. But I wanted to use this as an example to show how Even though I didn't get into graphic design because of political or social reasons, it did inspire me to make work like this. So yeah, this is some of my stuff.
Tony,
You did it again, Tony. I thought I made it easier for you.
I think it's bedtime or dinner time. I don't know what's happening with me at this point. But, yeah. But thank you so much, Michael. Christy says, what powerful messaging, incredible work, great work from Hannah, powerful. It was absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. Firstly, I want to say thank you to all of you for joining us. I see some faculty in there as well, which I think is really amazing, and thank you, and very supportive of our students. So I really appreciate that. From my standpoint as a female of color in the design industry, I do not see many people of color, much less or female, in my meetings or day-to-day life. So I'm really happy that George Brown has allowed for this opportunity for you to speak on this panel and to have an audience that's actually listening, which is really amazing. So I want to say that I'm proud of each and every one of you, and I am looking forward to the path and the future that you are going to start paving. Looking forward to seeing you in some of my meetings.
I think Tony just became all of your champions. I think that just happened.
Yeah.
That just
I'm engaged. I'm there. Call me, message me anytime.
I just wanted to echo Tony's comments. Thank you to everyone for joining. Everyone was super open to being on the panel. I think that's a really lovely sign. I think everyone's really committed to leveling the playing field here and making things a lot more equitable, which I think is, again, a really good sign for the future. I know it's been a super exciting last 3 days. Today's been our longest day of programming, and it was such a pleasure to finish off the evening with you folks. I wanted to let people know that there's still 2 more days of Yes. We got a lot of exciting things coming our way. Tomorrow we start at 11 a.m. with a talk by Nicola Hamilton and Leander Chanchi and their side gig, The Scaries. It is definitely one to check out. And then we've got some programming at 1 p.m. Jay Wall and Kayla Jacques from Rally talking a little bit about how we can use design to change the world. So I hope you'll join us for that. And at 2 p.m., my good friend Sydney Allen Nash is going to talk to you about what we talk about when we talk about money, which is a very important conversation for a lot of designers and figuring out how to negotiate for yourself and how to talk about what you deserve to get paid for your work. So I hope that you will join us tomorrow. It's been an absolute pleasure to spend this time with all of you, and I look forward to seeing you and all of your work soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone in the audience.